America's healthcare advocate, Carrie Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. You know, I got an email from a doctor the other day asking for some help. We gave it to her. She was very happy with that. Referred her over to the lovely Carol Lee Steele at RPS Benefits by Design, and she was able to get her into a program for health benefits she was very happy with. By the way, if you are looking for help with ACA, Obamacare, or any other type of health insurance, you can reach out to the good folks over at RPS Benefits by Design, 877-385-2224, 877-385-2224. Maria Allers is wonderful at working on employer-sponsored health care. She can do some pretty amazing things. Give them a call, 877-385-2224. Joining me in studio again, I am pleased to say the man who I hope is going to be the next governor of the state of Kansas, Philip Sarnecki. Welcome back.
Thanks, Gary. Great to be here again.
I hope to have you back a lot more.
Well, I'd love to be back a lot more. This is fun. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is personal to me. You and I've had a relationship for 8-9 years now since.
Yeah, probably about a decade. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty close. Okay, I know you pretty well. You know me pretty well. So my purpose in doing this, this is way out of my lane, right? This is not about health care, et cetera, but there are exceptions to the rule. Kansas has got some problems. I think a lot of us live in a cocoon, especially here in Johnson County, where everything looks wonderful and we think everything is great in the state. In reality, when you travel around the state, that's not necessarily what you see. Now, I've spent a lot of time in Hays, Kansas, believe it or not. I did a full radio week in Scott City, Kansas, a number of years ago for a farm convention. I'm on the air in Wichita. I'm on the air in Salina. I'm on the air in Great Bend, across the state on 15 radio stations. So I think there's a message here that needs to get out. So here's some things you probably don't know. Kansas ranked overall 21st in sales tax, 26th in corporate tax, 26th in property tax, and 23rd in overall taxes compared to Missouri, Texas, Indiana, which are ranked 7th, 10th, and 12th. Now, I know this is an issue you're concerned about. We can't attract business, and we'll talk about star bonds here in a little while. And we can't seem to attract new business. You and I talked about this the first time. Why do you think that is, Philip?
Well, you just mentioned the taxes, and it's actually worse than that because when you rank those, we're ranked against states like California and New York and Hawaii and Connecticut and Washington. But if you actually just take the states that are our border states that we compete with, maybe throw in Iowa and Arkansas, we actually have the highest personal income tax rate of all those states. We have the second highest corporate tax rate of all those states, and property taxes, which are not a problem in every state, but they're certainly a problem here in Kansas because our career politicians have failed to do anything about it. We are if you take those states and average them out, we're about 50% higher on average with our property taxes versus all those states around us. So, why are we not attracting enough business? Well, if you have the highest personal income tax rate, the second highest corporate tax rate, and you're overtaxing your people to death, we are also over-regulating our people to death. As I go around the state, as I talk to legislators, one of the big issue with business owners that when you speak to them is how much regulation they have to deal with in the state of Kansas. And so that's one of the things we're going to do on day one is we're going to rip out a lot of those regulations and get the obstacles out of the way to allow entrepreneurs and investors and business leaders to want to come to Kansas to build their businesses all across the state.
Yeah, I have to believe that if you're able to do that, you're able to accomplish that. I mean, going in there and doing similar things to what Glenn Youngkin did, what President Trump did with their executive orders, wiping out a lot of the bureaucracy, the nonsense, the ridiculous things that businesses have to go through. And we both know, because we're both private businessmen, we've been on the other side of this a long time.
Right.
That message is going to resonate. We're going to get that. You look at what's going on in some of these states where they're taking what were old utility facilities or coal facilities, turning them into gas and putting up AI projects next to them. You look at some of the things that they're accomplishing. You look at what just happened with the Kansas City Star building. That building got sold to a data center because they had the power there to run the AI that they're going to do because they ran printing presses in there. Duh. I mean, where around this state are there factories, opportunities that are sitting there empty, vacant, that could be converted if somebody were in the forefront of this? But it seems like nobody cares.
Well, I don't know that nobody cares, but I think people don't understand. I mean, when you're a politician, I mean, the people that I'm running against, for example, have over 100 years in office between them. Most of them have zero business experience to speak of whatsoever. And so it's just, they don't understand it. It's not the lens with which they look through. And so I think one of the things, as you know, I've been doing for over 30 years is we've been building businesses, we've been creating jobs, we've done it all across the state of Kansas. And that's what we're going to do as governor. I mean, it is one of my top priorities, if not my top priority. Kansas needs to be the best place for businesses. It needs to be the best place for families. And I believe we can do that. I really do. But we have to come alongside and partner with the people of Kansas, partner with the businesses of the state of Kansas to make this work for everybody, because it's not working for everybody right now.
So that means that you're going to concentrate on getting the message out to the business owners.
Yes.
And to potential business owners that want to come into this state.
And investors.
We're open for business.
That's right.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah. And, those are the conversations I've been having for over 3 decades. Those are the conversations I'm really comfortable with. But we also have to create an environment that attracts people here. And we're going to have to do that by cutting regulations and by reducing the tax burden, both on individuals, because we have to have the labor force, and then also on businesses as well.
When we come back from the break, I'm going to talk about what does it take to attract people who want to stay here. So we have all these kids graduated from KU, K-State, go down the list, Emporia, Pittsburgh State, go down the list. All these kids graduate. Do they stay here or do they leave? When we come back, we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about how much did Kansas actually grow last year? You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. If you want to learn more about Philip, go to the website, Support Sarnecki for Governor, Support Sarnecki for Governor. Great website. That's on WinRed, okay? And also on Facebook, it's Philip Sarnecki Governor. A lot of information up there about the debates he just did, a lot of other information. If you want to donate, WinRed is a great way to do that. That's one of the ways I do it, and it's certainly an easy way that you can do it. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate. Stay right there. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. I want to welcome KIUL 1240 AM in Garden City, Kansas, one of our newest affiliates. Happy to have you all on board out in Garden City. In studio with me, Philip Sarnecki. He is candidate for the governor of Kansas, and we are talking about all things Kansas. If you're interested in learning about him, and there's a lot to learn, believe me, if you go up and research him about who he is, the business he's had, the success he's had, what his vision is for this state, go to the website, philipsarnecki.org. philipsarnecki.org. You can also donate on WinRed if you want to do that as well. But philipsarnecki.org is the website. So this was a little shocking to me when I was doing some research for the show. Kansas grew by a whopping 1.4% last year, ranked 45th out of 50 states. Philip, that's pathetic.
Yeah, it is pathetic. I think I might have mentioned this the first time I was on your show a few months ago because it had just come out. CNBC ranked our economy as a state 48th in the country. They gave us an F. Moody's had come out just after that and said we were one of 20 states already in a recession. And, you talked about it. If you kind of live in South Johnson County, you feel a little insulated from that. But we've been all over the state. I mean, we've been from Goodland to Wamego to Kingman, Pratt, all points in between.
Scott, Hayes
El
City,
Dorado, Fort Scott, where I own businesses, by the way, in El Dorado and Fort Scott. But It's people are feeling it, and people are hurting, and we have got to help as state leadership, and unfortunately, our career politicians, who are the people that I'm running against, they're nice people, but they just don't understand what they're doing, and that's why our economy is growing the way it is. When you are overtaxing, overburdening, overregulating people to death, that's what you get. You get a growth rate of 1.4%. And we're overspending. We have a $26 billion total budget in the state of Kansas, and Carrie, $10.5 billion of that's been added in the last 7 years with no population growth. So the same amount of people are taking on an additional $10.5 billion of revenue. Well, no wonder our taxes are the highest of every state around us.
And did I hear, is this correct or incorrect, that we have added the numbers 40 or 60,000 new state employees in the state of Kansas since this particular governor?
I haven't heard that number, but what I can say is we have the third most state employees per capita of every state in the country. So only Alaska and South Dakota, which those kind of make sense because they're smaller states,
correct,
have more state employees per capita than Kansas does. So we're inefficient at every single layer you look at. You couldn't run a business that way. I couldn't run a business that way. And that's why the people of the state of Kansas are suffering.
And we're a small state.
We're a small state, yes.
We're going to switch to Starbuns here in a minute, but if the Chief, this deal with the Chiefs is done, Kansas will be the smallest state in the union population-wise to have an NFL team. Yet, what do we do? Again, you look around the bubble in Overland Park, you look at Olathe, you look at Lenexa, It looks wonderful. Get out there into these smaller communities and see what's happening on Main Street. Go out there and look at the stores that are boarded up. Look at the factories that have shut down. Look at the jobs that are not there anymore. And the only thing keeping a lot of those little towns alive is agriculture, because we still have a dynamic agricultural program in this country for everything that we do. But there just doesn't seem to be support to attract businesses in here. You read stories every day of companies going into rural communities, taking old manufacturing facilities, turning around, building brand new businesses in them. President Trump's got all these initiatives out there, all these opportunities. We're at 1.4% growth, Philip.
Yeah, this isn't a lack of opportunity. It's a lack of vision, and it's a lack of execution. And we need leaders in our state that can go out and they can attract investors, they can have conversations with business leaders and CEOs, and they can create an environment, an infrastructure that's attracting business, that's attracting jobs to the state of Kansas. I mean, again, that's what I've been doing for 3 decades, and that's the exact same thing I'm going to do as governor.
But as I said, going out of that last segment, how many of these bright kids from KU, K-State, Pittsburgh State, Emporia, go down, Hayes, the college, how many of these kids coming out of these schools with degrees in engineering and architecture, and I know some of these kids, okay? Ron Rowe's kid is coming out of K-State with a degree in engineering. I mean, you go down the list. Where are they going? They're leaving here and going because the opportunity's not here, Philip.
In 2023, we were the 8th most moved out of state in the country. And the number one reason cited by far and away, number one reason, 44% of the people said jobs. Couldn't find the job that I wanted. So because of the overregulation, because of the overtaxing, because of the overspending, we're not creating the type of new jobs and new businesses. We're not attracting the investment that we need. We're not bringing enough companies to the state of Kansas. And because of that, our economy's growing at 1.4%, and we're struggling.
We are struggling.
That's why we're ranked 48th by CNBC and on our economy.
Yeah. So let's switch gears. We got about 3 minutes left in this segment. Star bonds. The Chiefs are here. Whether good deal, bad deal, no deal, it's done.
Yeah.
What are your overall thoughts on star bonds? We're one of what I think 4 states that actually offer something like this.
Yeah.
They've been very successful in some cases. I don't know. Is it a mixed bag? What do you think?
Yeah, I think here's the problem with star bonds in general. There's been some situations where they've worked very well. There's been other situations where they haven't worked at all. I think the problem is our career politicians, because they have no business experience and no business background, what they're doing is they're over-relying on star bonds, because when you can't get enough new businesses started, then that's the only option they have left to go to. And then they want to pat themselves on the back, for the deal that they get. And, it was interesting in the debate last Friday, which I encourage everybody to go out and watch.
The one in Wichita.
Yeah, my first political debate ever, but I
thought you did pretty well.
Well, thank you. We thought it went extremely well, especially for my first one ever. But one of the candidates mentioned that the bondholders, he said, I would never have the state bail them out. The bondholders would be responsible for that on the star bonds. But here's the problem with that. That's not reality, because if you did that, your bond rating is going to tank, and all future bond issues, the amount of interest that you're going to have to pay is going to skyrocket, which is going to now overburden the state with interest payments to the bondholders. So no state in reality could ever allow that to happen. And so that was just kind of an ignorant comment by the person on the stage, again, not understanding the economics and the business of these star bonds. So I think if they're negotiated well, they could be used from time to time. But the problem is our career politicians are way, way over relying on them. And that's my big concern about it.
And that's why we have 1.4% growth in this state. And it's not changing, because that's not being recognized and that's not being dealt with. If you want information, go to the website, philipsarnecki.org, philipsarnecki.org. Also, WinRed, if you want to go up there, a lot of information up there. You make a direct donation. We'll be right back after the break. We're going to ask Philip, how's it going? He's been out on the campaign trail. How's it going? We'll know more when we come back from the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. My producer's Dave, Mr. David Thiessen behind the cameras, who puts all these shows together on our 16 podcast channels and our YouTube channel. By the way, 623,000 views, thanks to all of you between podcast and YouTube. We really appreciate all of that out there, in addition to all of you listening across the country on our 241 radio affiliates. So thank you all very much. In studio with me, Philip Sarnecki, candidate for governor of Kansas. His website is philipsarnecki.org, philipsarnecki.org. So how's the campaign going? I know you're all over the place, because trying to catch up with you is like herding chickens.
Yeah.
So
it's thanks for asking. It's going great. I mean, we're about 5.5 months in, to this. In some ways, I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, I've never run for office before. But
you and Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. Funny story behind that.
I know.
We're winning the game financially. So one of the reasons Republicans lost in 2018 in a state that, we haven't had a Democratic senator in almost 100 years. We're the longest running state without a Democratic senator.
I didn't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. We have supermajorities in both houses. I mean, Trump won the state 3 times by huge margins, but we've lost the governor's seat, the CEO job, to a Democrat in 2018 and 2022. Yep. And one of the big reasons is because we got crushed financially. The Republicans did not do a good job of raising money, and they weren't well capitalized. A political campaign in some ways is like a new business startup. You have to be well financed. You have to be well capitalized. So December 31 was a big financial cutoff in the state of Kansas, the way they do it, where all the candidates have to disclose their financial numbers. And not only were we number one of Republican and Democratic candidates, far and away number one at about $3 million, but that was the most ever raised in the history of Kansas gubernatorial races by that date, December 31. So we have a huge cash advantage as we come into the new year. There's an amazing grassroots enthusiasm going on all over the state, wherever we go. People are so tired of politics as usual. They're so tired of career politicians. And I think the energy for somebody from the outside and a business leader, a la President Trump and, what he's done coming in from the outside, or I think you and I might have talked about this the first time I was on as well. There's about a dozen governors who had never run for office. Because essentially the executive branch, it's a CEO job. You're the CEO of the state.
That's really what it amounts to.
Yep. And you need, I was at the RGA meeting a couple of months ago, and I listened to a session with, you mentioned Glenn Youngkin earlier, who had never run for office. Former governor of Virginia, Bill Lee, governor of Tennessee, very successful business leader and CEO. He had never run for office prior to running for governor of Tennessee. And Tennessee's doing a fantastic job phenomenal. As well. Yeah.
We're Datego's headquartering one of our companies there now.
Right. That's right. And then Mike Kehoe, of course, very successful car dealer for many, many years in Missouri. And I was listening to this conversation that they were having, the three of them. It was like a roundtable discussion. And the whole entire conversation was about international trade trips, recruiting investment to their state, conversations with business leaders and CEOs. It was about their state economy. And as I was listening to that and I was sitting there, I thought to myself, how could anyone think that your governor doesn't need very high levels of business acumen to do that job well? Because it is a massive part of the job. And so there's this enthusiasm across the state. And I'll give you one example. 4 months ago, when I was on here, I think the first time, I wasn't on social media. I didn't have Facebook and Instagram and X.
But we kind of kicked you off. I'm proud to say that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. And I didn't want to be on those. And my team said, no, you gotta be on social media if you're running for governor.
You're on now.
Well, not only are we on now, we are up to, we're getting close to 35,000 followers in just about 4 months since we went up on social media. We are far and away the most followed candidate on social media. So everybody go out and follow us if you're interested in the campaign. And again, to me, that just speaks to the grassroots enthusiasm that's out there across the state to get something different. We can't, the Republicans in this state, we can't go 12 years with a Democratic governor. And the people that I'm running against, those are the same people that have lost the last two governor's races, and we just can't do that a third time.
There's not a vision there, Philip.
No, there isn't.
I've paid close attention to politics in this state. I moved out of Kansas City, Missouri, to get away from what I was dealing with in Brookside in Kansas City in the state of Missouri, and moved to Kansas because it was a better environment for my family, my grandchildren, the whole 9 yards. But when I look at this state and I travel around this state where I'm doing radio in different places and I see these towns and these cities where Wichita's a vibrant town, doing very well. Okay. Got 3 or 4 luxury car dealerships on there. Go into Hayes, go into Scott City, go into some of these other places and see how well they're doing, and why aren't they ripe for companies to come in and do startups and opportunities? Well, because a lot of what you just talked about, taxes and bureaucracy.
Yeah, overregulating, overtaxing, and overspending. I mean, regardless of what you might think of the Chiefs deal, here's one example. The leaders of our state decided that they needed a luxury suite paid for by the taxpayers in the new Chiefs Stadium.
Run that by me one more time. This is not public knowledge, people. This is breaking news. In case
it's actually out there. But
it's breaking news here. Okay.
Yeah, they negotiated in the deal a luxury suite for themselves, paid for by the taxpayers, and we'll get extreme value out of that, but I'll make sure that the taxpayers are not paying for that when I'm governor, because it's tone deaf. I mean, when you look at the amount of spending, I mentioned earlier, $10.5 billion of new spending in the last 7 years. And that's what our Democratic governor has brought us. But quite frankly, it's also what our Republican leaders in the House and Senate have brought us to. We are overspending and therefore overtaxing, and we're overregulating. So we're not growing the economy, as you talked about. 1.4% is anemic. So, it really bothered me when I heard that the taxpayers are going to be paying for that luxury suite. And it's just, again, is that a huge number in a $26 billion budget? No, but that's not the problem. The problem is these are the taxpayer dollars.
Well,
and, I grew up, my father was a janitor, my mom was a secretary. I mean, every dollar is precious, and we have to protect the taxpayers of the state of Kansas.
My father was a coal miner.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
so, I know.
Every dollar.
Yeah. And so, to me, that's just arrogance. I'm sorry. That's the way I see it. That you think you should have that privilege because you're in political office.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously?
I totally agree.
No, I don't. To me, that's just. Yes, you said it. It's tone deaf.
Yeah.
In a time where we're not growing and we're being taxed to death, now we're going to have this luxuries.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way,
tucked into the deal.
You get to pay for it. So,
right.
There you go.
Yes.
You probably won't get invited, but you get to pay for it.
Well, I don't know if when I'm governor, we'll figure out some creative ways on how to use it and
I
get
could
some
see
real
where
value out of it. But
Chiefs start playing football again like they have the last 3 years. I'm sure there'll be a lot of high-level executives wouldn't mind coming to one of those games and talking about putting a deal together, to come into this state and do some work. And the other thing is, obviously, we touched on it a minute ago before we go to break here, is we have to be able to keep these young people. We've got some of the best schools in the country. K-State, that architecture program is one of the best schools in the country. KU's got some great KU Med.
Business school. Yeah,
business schools. I mean, law schools, Emporia, Pittsburgh State, go down the list. But those kids aren't staying here. So we have to create these opportunities.
Yeah, we need jobs. We need businesses that are here. We need jobs that will attract them. And it's something we'll get done as governor.
Yeah, I think it is something you'll get done, and I think one of the reasons why you're having this success you're having with the campaign is it's a different message, and I think people are ready for a very different message. If you want to learn more, go to the website philipsarnecki.org. philipsarnecki.org. All his information is up there. You can also go to WinReb, support Philip Sarnecki for governor. You can do a quick boom there and do a donation. If you want to do that, you can follow him on Facebook as well. And of course, this show is posted on all 16 of our podcast platforms. It'll also be posted up on our YouTube and then broadcast on our 15 affiliates around Kansas. When we come back from the break, we're going to switch topics now. And I'm going to ask Philip to talk about the success of the school system in the state of Kansas. How well are kids reading? How well are they doing at math? We'll get into that when I come back from the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Stay right there. We got the future governor in the house. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. You have a question, a problem, you need help, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. Philip Sarnecki, hopefully the future governor of the state of Kansas, in studio with me for the second time today. I hope to have him back many more times before we get to November. If you want to learn about this guy, I've known him for, I think, almost 9 or 10 years now. This is somebody who you really do need to get to know. If you want a governor that's going to turn this state around, get us away from 1.4% growth and the highest taxes in the area, this is the man that can do that. His website, philipsarnecki.org. philipsarnecki.org. You can also follow him on Facebook and support Philip Sarnecki for governor, also on WinRed. So Hunter, your campaign manager, dropped this on me as he came in the studio, and frankly, I was shocked because my grandchildren go to Blue Valley School District, and it's one of the, I think it's the number 4 rated school district or 14th rated in the country or something. It's ridiculous. It's a fabulous program, great academic program, great athletic program. That's not the case with the state of Kansas, is it, Philip?
No, the state of Kansas is struggling from an education standpoint, and there's a number of reasons for that. But just to give you a couple of examples, we are 15th in spending. We're 40th in NAEP scores. We last year spent a little over $20,000 per child, per student in the state of Kansas on education. And yet we had the worst test score outcomes that we've ever had for a state.
The worst.
The worst. So for the first time ever, our test scores were below the national average. So in 4th grade, 70%, it's actually a little over 70% of our 4th graders are not proficient in math or reading at a 4th grade level, a little over 70%. And so we are failing our children. I mentioned this at the debate too. I mean, it kind of goes without saying that your children are your future.
Oh.
But if we don't fix this, Kansas won't have much of a future. This has got to be a top priority to fix. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the things where you see education succeeding around the country in different states is charter schools.
Oh.
And we have less than a dozen in the state of Kansas. And one of the reasons for that is the charter schools are approved by the districts.
Yep.
And we need an independent authority, an independent body that is approving those charter schools. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to be able to scale the schools that are doing, the charter schools that are doing well. So let's go replicate those that are doing well across the country or across the state. Why are they doing well? And then let's, go and replicate that. So that's one thing that we need to be doing. The second thing is, so the Center for Education Reform, so I mentioned CNBC ranked us 48th on the economy as a state and gave us an F. Well, the Center for Education Reform for school choice ranked us 50th. They ranked us dead last in school choice and gave us an F as well. So we're getting an F on the economy. We're getting an F on school choice. So we don't have enough options. So some people are thrilled with their schools, and that's wonderful.
Well, Blue Valley is...
Sure.
Yeah.
I grew up in a public school. My wife grew up in a public school. I mean, public schools can be wonderful, but they're not working for everyone.
No.
And some people need different options. They need different choices, and parents need to be in control of that, not state government bureaucracy. And we need to give our parents more choice for those that do need more options, whether it's a charter school, whether it's a private school, whether it's homeschooling, and we need to empower the parents to be able to make those choices for their children.
But we don't see that happening. We don't yet, and while communities like Johnson County with the highest property taxes, and I know because you and I both pay them. Okay, but I've got grandchildren go to school here, so I'm like, okay. But you get further out into the rural communities where they don't have the assets and they don't have the ability. The quality of education for those kids declines dramatically, yet there are no alternatives. They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice in a lot of places, like in Wichita, Salina, other places, they don't have a choice there either. Because as you said, and charters are interesting because I served on a charter school, Urban Children's Leadership Academy in Kansas City. And I remember this is on the east side of Kansas City, mostly African-American population. The parents that came to that school were so thankful that their kids were going to a school where they were in uniforms, where there was discipline, where they learned. I remember one mother's child was going to be kicked out of school, and she came in and she begged us not to kick him out of school. I don't want him to have to do what I do for a living. I don't want him to have to stick people. She was a lab tech. That's all she did. She wanted him to have a future. These kids aren't getting that future because we don't have that system.
Yeah, well, that goes back to my being able. So there's an example. I'm not familiar with that school, but that's an example of take those schools that are doing well, that are exceptional, and let's go scale those around the state and create opportunities to do that. So we can empower the parents to have those kind of choices and options for their children.
So how do you answer this issue when people say, well, you're taking money away from the rural school districts, they won't be able to survive?
Well, first of all, it's just, if you look at the data, it's not true. School spending continues to increase. It continues to go up and up. And so we're not doing that. Again, we're spending over $20,000 per student. That's what the taxpayers are spending.
That's a lot of money.
Per student, per year. That's what we spent last year in the state of Kansas to educate our children. Part of the problem is that where the money's going, it's an allocation of resources. It's not a money issue, it's an allocation issue. Way too much money going to bureaucracy. I could go through, we don't have time, but I could go through the whole educational layers in the state as opposed to getting the money into the classroom. Exactly. Getting the money to the teachers and getting the money to the students.
And how much of that revolves around the teachers' unions and their influence in the state?
A big part of it. No question. No question. And when you get career politicians that are bought and paid for, that's one of the nice things about, me being an outsider is I'm not beholden to anybody.
No, you're not.
I don't owe anyone anything for a political career because I've never had a political career.
Thank you.
And so I can truly come at this with a different lens and with a different, from a different angle than what all the folks that I'm running against and the way that they approach it.
And I think you do.
Well, thank you.
And I think you're probably going to win this race.
Well,
That's
thank
my
you.
humble opinion.
It's going very well.
Bill, it certainly is. Thank you for coming on today.
Of course. Thanks
and
for
now I
having
leave
me.
you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. I would have to say that probably applies to the man sitting across from me in this studio today. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Goodbye, America.